President Obama is at Stanford University today for the first White House summit on cybersecurity and consumer protection. The president is also signing an executive order aimed at getting companies to share information about cyber threats. Top officials from the government will be there, as will Apple's CEO Tim Cook. The CEOs of Google, Facebook, and Yahoo, they've all been invited, and they are all taking a pass. Bloomberg West editor-at-large Corey Johnson is there at Stanford with more.
Yeah, Trish, a big gathering here in the heart of Silicon Valley, right here in Palo Alto, California, on the Stanford campus. And some of the biggest names in all of technology. Heck, the CEO of the biggest company in all the world, Tim Cook of Apple Computer, is going to be here and have some remarks here probably within the next hour, ahead of a half-an-hour speech from President Obama to talk about the issue of cybersecurity, an issue that's so important to every kind of business. And as every company gets deeper and deeper into the world of technology, it's not just the issues of privacy, but it's the issue of keeping that data safe. And keeping it safe not just from hackers and attackers, but also safe from the federal government. That's where the tension is here. A number of CEOs, Mark Zuckerberg from Facebook, Marissa Mayer from Yahoo, have chosen not to come to this event today. And those are companies that have had issues and raised issues with the NSA for going in and taking data without being asked. It's a big deal here in Stanford, Trish.
It is a big deal. I mean, that's been the big concern. I spoke with General Keith Alexander recently about this issue. This is the former head of the NSA, and he said, he really wants to see tech companies work more closely with government. In the meantime, you talk to someone like Mark Andreessen, and Mark Andreessen is saying, hey, no way, Jose, because we've got a real problem here where essentially other countries are going to say, use our version of this technology. You don't want to go near the U.S.'s because there is that data security threat. So at some point, the reality is, Corey, you got to bring both sides together because, yes, you need privacy, but we all need to be secure as well.
Look, fundamentally, this is affecting business. It's hurting American companies that are trying to sell their goods overseas. And in fact, we just talked to the CEO of Symantec, Mike Brown, and I wanted to listen to what he had to say. We had an interesting conversation about a lot of things, but he talked about these issues and how the NSA's policies and the federal government's policies are hurting their ability to do business in Europe. Take a listen to what he had to say.
Well, I'm pretty pleased that the White House, through the executive order, which was just issued, is really getting behind sharing, information sharing, because we need a lot of tools to be able to protect society, whether it's governments, corporations, or individuals. And sharing is one of the things that we need to do to be able to better protect each other.
We've had a lot of hacks for a lot of years. I mean, your business is entirely based on that, right? But I feel like the tenor and maybe the purpose of those attacks has dramatically changed, particularly with the North Korean attack on Sony, the possible Chinese link to the attack on Anthem. What's your perspective?
Well, I think you're certainly right. We still see kind of the garden variety attacks, hackers of days past. Those used to be just a nuisance. So we're still seeing those, but of course what's capturing everyone's attention are these attacks that are much more persistent, much more sophisticated, because the severity is so much more with those attacks. So all of the technologies that we're focused on today really is how to protect companies and governments, people, against those more persistent type of attacks.
Awareness has never been higher about the risks that businesses face to cyber attacks. What are companies doing that's making them more vulnerable, even as their awareness is high?
Well, I think the technology trends that we're seeing really create more attack surfaces. If you think about more information flowing to the cloud, mobile devices, these type of trends really mean there's a much broader surface for attackers to use. And of course, they're looking for the easiest way in. So these technology trends, which make our lives easier, more convenient, are also making our lives more vulnerable.
Paraphrasing, what you're saying is that the place where the attacks are happening is different. That's been an interesting struggle for Symantec to go from protecting desktop computers to what? I mean, how do you look at what your world is?
Yeah, so our world is still about protecting enterprise or individuals, and we're continually increasing the level of sophistication of the technologies that we're using to protect folks. So it's still about some of the same, what we say are control points, the endpoint, web, email, data center security, but now we have to think broader than that to be able to protect more of these attack surfaces. So it's really a layered approach that we need today to be able to protect people.
So you may get a chance to talk to the president today. A lot of the top names in Silicon Valley, the CEOs of some of the biggest companies, the biggest company, Tim Cook is going to be here as well. But a lot of CEOs have chosen not to be here, and they're companies that have a contentious relationship with this White House about their NSA policies. Do you think the White House has learned how those policies are not just civil liberties concerns, but hurting business?
Oh, I think there's been plenty of dialogue about that, but our approach is we need to engage in the conversation. I think the president's well aware that some of the activity that's been done, obviously with Edward Snowden, not his doing.
Well, he's Edward Snowden, say what you will about him, and there's a lot to be said. Let these businesses know that the federal government was sneaking around and taking their data. And we've heard repeatedly, whether it's from Hewlett Packard or Cisco or Microsoft, that customers are wary of doing business with them because they're based in the U.S. because of that NSA and White House policy.
We're certainly seeing that governments in Europe are a little more reluctant to engage, companies as well. So we have to adapt our business to be cognizant of that. But I'd say at the same time, it's very important to stay engaged with the federal government to make sure that the policies that are put in place are really collaborating with us, and so that we can drive an agenda together that protects all of us much better.
Tell me that again. You've got potential customers in Europe who are saying what?
They're concerned about their data privacy, so their issue of data sovereignty, whether that data leaves their country, is very important to them.
And do they have other options? And a strong dollar is probably not helping that discussion when you've got to go into the product that's got a higher cost just because of the dollar. Is there real competition in Europe that could take that business away?
Well, I think more what they're asking us for is creating localized presence so that we can keep the data in country. So that's one of the challenges for us. The more business you have in Europe, 50% of our business is overseas. We have to look at that. That becomes more cost effective. If you're a smaller company, that becomes much more difficult to do.
That's disconcerting, to say the least. Do you think that's one of the messages that Silicon Valley executives are going to share with the president today?
Well, our message today is really all about what we need to do following on the executive order for information sharing. So we're pleased to see the leadership there. Symantec is a company that's already involved in 60 sharing relationships, because security, when I talked about a layered approach, one of the tools that we want to be able to use is sharing information with other private companies as well as the government, so that we can get a better understanding of what the global threat landscape looks like.